Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer Stay. This is Coloring Bliss. And if you hear a little snoring in the background, that would be my cute little dog Rose. She's asleep back here behind these markers. And speaking of markers, that is our subject today. We are going to learn all about how to color with alcohol markers. I'm going to be using specifically the Ohuhu brand, but it doesn't really matter what brand you have. These tips and tricks are going to help you out and make your coloring better. I can't wait to share them with you. And if you are the type of person who loves to learn different ideas to help you with your coloring and your art projects, then I would like to highly recommend the Coloring Academy at coloringbliss.com. It's a monthly subscription, only $15 a month. And it opens up a huge library full of hundreds of hours of videos, tutorials, workshops, downloadables, all kinds of resources to help you as you learn how to be better at this beautiful thing we call coloring. You can learn how to blend color pencils. You can learn how to work with alcohol markers. You can learn how to find the shadows and the highlights on an object and how to shade those properly. You can even learn how to pick colors confidently to make sure that every time you sit down to do a project, it's going to come out spectacular. There's so much to learn there, just 15 bucks a month. If you like this video today and the format of how I'm teaching you and the way I teach, then you're going to love the Coloring Academy. So my hope is this video will be a little taste of what you will get when you become a Coloring Academy member. So let's get started by learning about alcohol markers. But wait, Jennifer, before you get started, I need to remind you all that we have 1 day left. Today is your last day to get your entries in for our big Ohuhu marker giveaway. You really only have a few hours left, so follow the link in the video description. We're picking 4 winners. 3 people are going to win a prize that Ohuhu has donated, the pastel marker set. Such a beautiful prize. Thank you, Ohuhu, for sponsoring that part of the giveaway. And one of you will win the grand prize. We have purchased a beautiful 320 marker set of the Honolulu alcohol markers, and one of you get to win that. And included with that prize is a book to help you organize your markers and help you pick color schemes and teach you a little color theory. It's an awesome book printed on beautiful marker paper. You're going to love it. I just want to say good luck to everyone, and if you are watching this video after the giveaway is over, please don't be frustrated. We have more beautiful giveaways planned very soon and you don't want to miss out on them. So my suggestion to you, subscribe to this channel and hit the little notification bell, and then come on over to Coloring Bliss and become a free member. That will get you into our newsletter and you'll receive emails that will tell you all about upcoming giveaways. I don't want you to miss out ever again, so please follow those instructions and get yourself in line so you can have a chance to win the next big giveaway. I'm so excited. All right, let's get to coloring with alcohol markers. Let's start with tip number 1 of how to color with alcohol markers. And we need to start with the basics, and that is the actual book or paper that you'll be coloring on. This is really important and it's going to set you up for success. Paper really does matter. For me, what I love for a marker paper is a very thick, sturdy cardstock with a very smooth finish. The smooth finish will protect the nibs of your markers and allow you to do beautiful flicks and strokes across that paper. The thick cardstock allows you to do lots of layers. There's lots of fiber there to hold lots of different ink. So the thick cardstock is what I look for. Now we do have a print shop at coloringbliss.com where we sell different coloring books. We have over 900 different coloring pages you can choose from, and we have different types of paper you can have your books printed on. So for instance, here is the book one book that I really love is Flower Bliss Volume 2, and I have it printed on the beautiful marker paper. And it is bound at the top, so it's easy and good for either left-handed or right-handed. And the other thing that is great is that the pages are printed single-sided, so I don't have another picture on the back of this one. See what happens? There's almost always some sort of ghosting or bleeding that happens when you color with markers. Even on a sturdy, thick piece of cardstock like this, that will happen. And so it's really important that you get single-sided books. So I highly recommend the books we print here at coloringbliss.com. Now, if you decide to work in a double-sided book, what will happen? Let me show you a book I am working in right now. I'm going to switch the camera view so you can see. This book right here is called Small Victories, and it's by Johanna Basford. I really like the small format of it, and I like that all the images inside are just quick little things that you can color and make a beautiful design and a beautiful illustration without too much trouble. Now, going along with that idea of it being a simple place to color, I wanted to use alcohol markers in this book because alcohol markers are so easy on the hand and you can color so quickly once you get the hang of them. So how do I get over that? Let me show you the beginning of this book. I've already done some coloring. We had a previous video where I colored that flower, but look how pretty these little images are. But when you flip to the other side, you can see how it totally destroys the backside image of each of these pages. It's really a shame, but I got around it by doing something pretty simple. I bought a second book. This worked out pretty easy for me, so what I end up doing now, for instance, is this side of the page gets colored in this book. So this one got left blank, and then you can see that the back side has been colored on this page, and it ruined that page, so I was able to color it in this book. And eventually I'm going to combine the two books and put them together into one once I'm done. But for now, I'm really enjoying just going back and forth from book to book and coloring these images in. We're going to talk more about how to color little details here in just a minute, but I wanted to give that to you as an idea. You can also take your images from your coloring books, scan them, or take a photo with them and print them out onto some really nice marker paper cardstock. That's another option that you can do, and then you don't destroy or hurt the backside of your pages because you've made an extra copy. So that's another idea. If you have any other ideas of how to work in a double-sided page book with alcohol markers, comment below. I'd love to know how you color with your alcohol markers in books like that. Okay, tip number 2 that you need to know when you're coloring with alcohol markers is you always need to use a blotting page. Blotting page is a spare piece of paper or a piece of plastic that you put behind the page that you're coloring. Now, like you saw here in the Johanna Basford book, I have a lot of bleeding and ghosting that's going on. So if I decide to color on this page next, I need to protect this page right here. I know this one's going to get destroyed and ruined, but I don't want the ink to leak onto this page and ruin this one. So there's different kinds of blotting pages. This one right here is what came with my current set of Honolulu Ohuhu markers, and it is perfect for the Johanna Basford Small Victories book. Look at that. It fits in there perfectly, and you can see all the bleeding that it has saved me from by using this blotting page. But you don't have to use a fancy blotting page. You can also just use a spare piece of cardstock. You can see this one's had a lot of leaking and other strokes that have slipped to the side, and this little blotting page has saved the day. So I highly recommend and say that it's actually vital to use a blotting page. It will save you a lot of grief, so please use a blotting page. Tip number 3 for coloring with alcohol markers has to do with small details. Now, a lot of us avoid small details when it comes to alcohol markers. And let me show you what I've been doing in Small Victories that has been so successful. Now, this very first one is actually a good example. So here you can see tons of little details in this image, and it's really tricky to get in all of those spaces. So you want to limit the number of markers you use. For instance, I typically, when I'm blending, I use 3 markers, a light, a medium, and a dark, and I'll demonstrate that here for you in a few minutes. But when you're working in a tiny little book like this with tiny little leaves to color, there's no way that I can get a full 3-color blend in there. So here you can see I've done a 2-color blend on that orange section right there, and it looks really soft and pretty. But pretty much everywhere else I was doing just 1 color, maybe slipping in a 2nd color just to get a little bit of shading going on. The other thing you can do is before you color all these little details, you see the yellow background? I colored that first. And then I just went right over all of these details with that yellow background marker. And then I was able to come on top, because it was such a light valued color, I was able to come on top of it with darker valued colors, and it didn't affect the illustration. You can't tell that there's yellow underneath that green or yellow underneath that orange. It just all came together so lovely. So that's how I've been handling tiny little details. But you can see you can get blends. See down here, that truck has a nice little blend on it. The balloons have a nice little blend on it. You can do more than you think with the alcohol markers. And my favorite part of these Ohuhu Honolulu markers for small details is that tiny little brush nib. You can do very soft, very delicate pressure with that tiny, tiny little tip and get into some of the smallest little leaves. Now you want to remember that sometimes the alcohol ink in any alcohol marker can feather and spread. What happens is the fibers of the paper act like a sponge, and when you draw out that line, sometimes that sponging property of the paper will pull a little bit of the ink away from the stroke that you just created. Some papers are worse at that than others. And so you want to do a little color test to check and see if the paper you're working on does a lot of spreading and feathering. If it does, you want to keep your ink back away from the illustration line so that it will spread out to that illustration line, especially when you're working in tiny little details like this book here. So remember, use the tiny little brush nib for those details. Don't be afraid to color over everything with your background color, and keep your blends to maybe just 2 colors so that you don't have to try to squish too much ink into one tiny little detail. Now I have a quick little bonus tip to go with number 3, and that is that you should try to keep track of the markers you're using when you're working in a coloring book. A lot of times in books like this, you like to do a 2-page spread like this one and maybe have a color scheme that can transfer from one page to the other and have one big cohesive look. If that's what you're doing, then I would highly recommend you write down the markers you're using. I have a little sketchbook like this. I put the name of the book on top, what page I'm working on, and any of the markers with their numbers. I also use some gel pens and a color pencil on that one. So I mark all those down so that I can remember what colors I used. So when I go to the other side, the facing page, and I want to use some of the same colors to keep a cohesive look, I can easily do that by pulling out the colors I used on the previous page. It's quick, it's simple, but it's very effective and saves a lot of headaches, especially when you're working with a huge set of markers with hundreds of different colors. For tip number 4 on how to color with alcohol markers, we're actually going to do some coloring. I've created a little worksheet for myself so that I can demonstrate 4 different ways to color with alcohol markers. We're going to start really basic and then move through a few different steps and things to add some shading and some bling to our coloring. It's going to be a lot of fun, and this is a really good example of the kind of lessons and workshops that we do at the Coloring Academy on coloringbliss.com. So if you especially like this part of the video, you're really going to like the Coloring Academy. Okay, let me tell you really quick how I made this page. I have a little stamp set set right here by Crafter's Companion that has a cute little cupcake. I thought a cupcake would be simple and fun for us for this demonstration. And for the ink, I used Memento Tuxedo Black. It's one of the inks that I know for sure doesn't bleed or budge when you're working with alcohol markers. So I'll put a link to this ink for you in the video description in case you want some good ink for stamping images in your own art studio. Okay, first I want to pick a color scheme that we can copy and use in all 4 cupcakes. So let's go to the Tritone workbook. If you're interested in this workbook, it's a brand specific workbook that gives you tons of different color schemes and different swatching, and it puts your markers in order. If you're interested in a book like this, we did a video very recently where I did a full tour of this book and showed you how to fill it out. We have books like this for a lot of different brands, so come on over to coloringbliss.com and check it out. I want a red cherry on this cupcake. And we're going to call it my birthday cupcake because my birthday is in March. So we will celebrate with a red cherry on the cupcake. So all of these color schemes right here feature the color red, and some of them have 5 colors, some of them have just 2 colors in the color scheme. We have lots of choices here. We can even do a monochromatic color scheme if we wanted to. Lots of choices. I think I'd like something kind of fun and festive, so youthful type colors. This one is kind of cute, although I don't know if yellow-green or blue-green frosting would be very appetizing. We could do analogous. That's a very simple color scheme with red, red, violet, and violet. I like it. Let's do an analogous color scheme. It gives us 3 colors. We could do red, violet frosting, or violet. Let's do violet frosting, a red violet cupcake holder on the bottom, and a red cherry on the top, and then we'll throw in a little bit of green for the stem on the cherry. Although now that I think of it, aren't maraschino cherries red even on the stem? Steve, do you know? Well, my cherry has a green stem, so that's what we'll do since it's my birthday cupcake, right? So let's grab, I'm going to grab red. The book tells me which marker numbers to grab. I'm going to grab red violet, and I'm going to grab violet. And I'm grabbing the main middle color first. I have a number here for a light, a medium, and a dark for each color on these little color schemes, but I think I want to work with the middle tone first because that will give us room to expand our coloring. So the very first type of coloring I recommend you practice when you get your alcohol markers is the most simple. I call it like block coloring, where you just block in a whole bunch of color. You don't worry about shadows or highlights. You're just coloring for the sake of coloring, getting some beautiful colors down and enjoying the markers. So let's go ahead and do a basic coloring of our first cupcake and see how it looks. One of the main questions I get from people about coloring with alcohol markers is how to get rid of streaks. Now, first off, you want to make sure you're on good paper like we talked about earlier. That will help a lot. Secondly, you want to go slow. Give time for that nib to move across the paper and fill the fibers of that paper with that ink. Slow and steady will win this race. And then also remember, there are ways to hide the streaks, so don't be too hard on yourself and let yourself just enjoy the coloring process. Okay, we've got our first cupcake colored in a basic blocking type of coloring method. We just laid down the color in the color scheme that we chose and just enjoyed the coloring process. Let me bring it up to the screen so you can see the amount of streaks that I got. I did pretty good, especially on the bottom of the cupcake. There's a few little streaks in the purple, so a way to solve that problem really quick is to take your purple marker, the same one, or you can go with a darker shade, and go over your coloring with little dots of texture. It's totally appropriate on a cupcake to have these little dots. And what it will do is distract the eye so that you don't see the streaks as much. The eye will go to the cute dots and they'll be distracted by that. I'm just going to do dots along the base of the frosting, just like that. So cute. Let me show you at a different angle here. Now, as I was coloring, I got thinking, I bet there is a color scheme that will include the green, because some of these color schemes are split analogous color schemes. So I looked down here, and sure enough, right here is the same color scheme as analogous 3, but it's called complementary analogous 2, and it includes yellow-green. I was debating between using green or yellow-green for the stem on the cherry, but when I saw that color scheme right there, it answered the question for me that I should use yellow-green, and it'll have more impact and be a really pretty complementary analogous color scheme. So this book really does help answer questions about how to put colors into your art. Okay, let's go on to this one right here. We're going to do some gray shading for this. Now, a lot of people also ask me, after they ask about streaks, they ask about what do you do with all those grays. For instance, with the Ohuhu Honolulu big set that we're giving away, that set has over 36 grays. I think it's got 45, 49, something like that grays. So many grays. What do you do with them? Well, first off, what you can do is actually color with your grays. This is a little mandala that I drew, and I wanted to keep it monochromatic or very just black and white, but I wanted to add some texture, some interest visually onto the mandala, so I used grays. And I used 3 different grays to create that blend, and then I put white gel pen on top of it to add those little white teardrop details that are on each of those little petals. I love how this turned out. I'm still debating about whether to color these flowers on the outside, whether I should use color or more gray. I can't decide, but right now I love how it looks just like this, so it has stayed this way for a couple weeks because I'm just loving it. So that's one way to use your grays, is actually color with them. Another way to use grays is to shade white objects. Let me show you this coloring page that I colored with my Ohuhu markers. I love the gray on the eyeballs. It gives them so much dimension, and I used, I think it was just 2 grays, not very dark grays because we're working with a white background, and I didn't want it to be as stark as that gray right there. And then I used colorless blender to soften the edge of the gray and give it such a nice round look. So that's another way to use your grays. But one of my absolute favorite ways to use my gray markers is to do it in a way of shading. So what we're going to look for are some grays that we can add to our color scheme here to create the shading we need. And the first question I always ask myself, the color I'm going to combine the gray with, is it a warm color or a cool color? Because you want to pair a cool colored gray with a cool color, and you want to pair a warm colored gray with a warm color, and that will make the grays really sing with that marker rather than fight the marker. So let's look here. Violet is, it can either play cool or warm. It can go both ways. The red violet is definitely a warm color, and the cherry is definitely a warm color. So I'm going to grab some warm grays, and we're going to test really quick to see how they look. So we need a warm color gray that is stronger in value than this violet right here. So not a really light gray. If we used a gray like this, it wouldn't have any impact on that cupcake. So we need to pick a gray that has more, well, that's really dark. We need a gray that has more color to it, more saturation, a darker value gray. So let's try this one. That feels more like just a touch darker or about the same shade as this purple. I think it's going to be perfect for the red violet. So I'm going to pair this warm gray. I forgot to tell you the colors I'm using. For the cupcake, I'm using RV200 Dark Orchid. For the frosting, I'm using V270 Lobelia. For the cherry, I'm using R2 Vermilion. And for the stem, I'm using GY3 Bud Green. And now, to go along with our cupcake base, I've picked WG070 or Warm Gray 07. And I think I'm going to grab a cool gray to go with our violet. Let's see if this is a good value. That seems like maybe we need one a little bit darker, a little more saturated. Let's try this one. Oh, well, that's a lot cooler. Look at the difference. Wow. Let's try this one. Oh, I'm liking this one, but maybe just a hair darker. Let's keep it out though. Nope, that's lighter. Let's see, let's try this one. That's better. That seems like a shade darker in value than this one here. So we'll use that gray. Put that one back, and this gray that I picked to go with the violet is CG Roman numeral 207 or Cool Gray Roman numeral 27. That's the marker I picked. So the first step of using gray as a shading is to get your base layer colored in. So I'm going to go ahead and color it the same way we did on the basic coloring. When you're anticipating adding gray for shading, you don't have to be quite so worried about streaking, but you don't want to leave so many obvious streaks that you're going to have to work hard to get rid of them. So still take your time with coloring this base layer. Now I'm also taking a minute to write down the colors of markers I've used so far, so if you want to follow along with your Ohuhu alcohol markers, you can. Alright, it's time to add some gray shading. So we're going to pair this warm gray with the red violet, and I'm going to have my red violet marker ready, and with the brush nib I'm going to add some flicks, and we'll see if this warm gray is dark enough. It's kind of disappearing really fast. That's what I was talking about, is we want to make sure we have a value that is one step darker than the red violet, and I think what we have going on here is one that is too close. Let me see if this one, well, this one's a lot darker, but let's give it a swing. I'm going to put the name up here. This is WG090. Okay. Let's try that one. Oh yeah, that one's working better. Now because it's a warm gray working with a warm color, it will sort of just melt into it and start the shading so quickly and easily. And then you want to come back with the same color. So I've got my RV200 and I'm going to flick right on top of it. That sort of sandwiches that gray ink in between two of the violets and makes it look like we did a dark violet instead of a gray. But look at that shading. Look at the difference between those two cupcakes already. We just started. Now let's grab CG, our cool gray. CG Roman numeral 207 is the one we picked, and let's see if I got a good one. I want some shading behind the cherry. Oh yeah, that's a nice darker color. I'm kind of doing little flicks here and maybe some shading right here to make that frosting look puffy. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to grab my violet again and do that sandwich of ink. So the trick with shading with gray is to pick a value that is just slightly, like one step darker, and then sandwich the gray in between the colors of ink. just like that. That's the look I was going for, is kind of a nice shadow behind that cherry. And if you feel like it's starting to look a little blotchy or streaky, you can just go over the whole thing again. You can add more gray. It's not a one and done kind of thing. One thing you need to really remember about alcohol ink is that it takes time to dry. Once you get your ink down, if you touch the paper, you'll feel it is kind of cool to the touch. That's the alcohol that is in the fibers that hasn't dried yet. Once it feels like all the same temperature, you know it's probably close to being 100% dry. But right now this feels cool to the touch, so it's not totally dry. And you can't make decisions on whether you like what you've done or not until it is totally dry. I'm using the brush tip a lot. That's why I like the Honolulu markers, because they have that brush nib. Okay, I think that's looking really good. Let's do some shading on the cherry now. We're going to use the Warm Gray 090. And I just want a little shading, not much, at the base of the cherry. And then I'll grab my red and do that sandwich of ink again. I might bring that shadow up just a little bit more. I'm liking it on this side. There. Now we also have that stem that we could add a shadow to if we wanted to. And that yellow-green could go either warm or cool gray, but I'm going to take it cool gray. And we'll put a streak like that on the base of the stem, and then add one more layer using the tiniest pressure on the tiniest tip of that brush nib. Ooh, it's just calling for some highlights, but we're going to do highlights later. Or no, I'm going to do it now. It needs a highlight, so I'm going to grab one of my favorite white pens. We recently did a video where we put 3 different white gel pens up against each other, and I think this one got second place. It's the Uniball Signo Broad White, but it's a really good one, and I have it handy, so we're going to use it. Put a little highlight on our cherry and a little highlight on our frosting. Maybe right here too, a little dotted line, and one little highlight on the stem. Loving it! Okay, that was really good, and I'm going to write down right here for you that I used the Uniball Signo White. I'll put a link to that video where we learned about white gel pens in case you want to see which one won that battle. All right, lesson number 3, or cupcake number 3, is to use the tritone combos. So instead of just one color, we're going to use 3 colors. So let's start with, I'll teach you how to do this, with the base of the cupcake first. So we need all 3 of our red-violet colors. That's these ones right here. So I'm adding in a couple new colors to work along with the ones that we already have. I'll write these down and tell them to you. We've got RV 250 Pansy, and we have RV 160. I think it's Thistle. Yep, Thistle. And for this, we're going to basically do Jennifer's rule of blending thirds. This is a blending rule that works fantastic for both alcohol markers and color pencils. I'll put a link to a video where I teach Jennifer's rule of blending thirds for color pencils, really slow and methodical, so you can learn it from that video, okay? But for now, we're going to do this kind of quick and easy using the brush nibs. First step is to take the lightest color and color the whole section with that color. Okay, then we're going to take the mid-tone and we're going to start a shadow. So remember how we put the shadow below the frosting? We're going to do the same thing here. So we're going to flick in that second color, the mid-tone color, about 2/3 of the way down. And then with our darkest color, we're going to flick in just a little bit, like that. And that establishes our shading. Now with our mid-tone, we're coming back and we're going to go over the darkest and where we had the mid-tone before and just work on blending out that transition. Lots of ink, so make sure you have a blotting page under this or work on it like a glass surface like I am so it's easy to clean up. Now I'm going to flick with our lightest color from the bottom up, and again concentrate on that transition between the mid-tone and the light. And leave it be now. Remember, you need to let it dry so that we can tell if we have done a good enough blend or if we need to work out the blend a little bit more. So I'm going to leave it be for a minute, and while it's resting I'm going to work on the frosting. So I'm going to follow exactly the same rules. I'll write down the new colors for you and we'll see how the frosting looks colored in tritones. Now I'm working the same steps as before, Jennifer's rule of blending threes, into the violet and the cherry and the stem. Now the difference here is that some of these markers, it's quite a big jump in value. So instead of going like having 5 markers, a light, medium light, medium dark, dark, like that, we only have 3 markers to work with. So there is a little trick that you can do, and that is I usually put a little bit of the dark ink onto the glass mat I'm working on and pick it up with the medium tone. That way I can blend out some of those harsher edges and get the look that I'm looking for. Now remember though that it takes time for these inks to dry, so check for the coolness on the paper to make sure it's dry before you make a final decision whether you think it's too dark, too light, needs more blending, all those decisions. Also on the stem, it's very small, so to get a 3-color blend is going to take some delicate work. Use that tip of that brush nib really well. Still a little cool to the touch, so it's not quite dry, but I'm really happy with the way the blend looks. I think it's very dynamic and pretty. To clean up the ink that I was talking about that I put on the glass, I use a little hand sanitizer. Now, if you feel like I'm going too fast and there's more things you wish I could teach you with things like this ink trick, then I again recommend you become a member at the Coloring Academy, because we have a 4-part, it's almost 4 hours long workshop where I teach those types of tricks and many, many more to you. So in a short format video like this, it's hard to get everything in. I'm doing my best, but if you really want my best, come on over to the Coloring Academy. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add some white highlights again because it's just so fun and cute. And on the cherry and right here. And I might as well add little highlights here too, because then it's only fair. Everybody got the highlights. A little bit right here. Okay, there. Everybody is fair with highlights now. In fact, I'm going to add a little bit more right here. because the frosting is sort of piled up right there. All right, final one here is on mixed media is the idea here. So we're going to use the Ohuhu alcohol markers as a base layer to get the basics done, and then we're going to bring in color pencils to bring in the shading. So instead of using the mid-tones that we used up here to create this one, we're going to use the lighter tones. So for red, we're going to use this RV 260. So the cherry gets a base layer of the lightest color, so we can build on it with other colors. And again, with the violet, we're going to use V230. Oh, I put 270, but this is actually V230. Sorry about that. And I'll color it in, and I'm going to do the same for the red violet and the green stem. All of it gets a really nice coat of our lightest color, a base layer. Okay, so we basically have a tinted or a lighter in value version of this one up here. Okay, and now we're going to add some new media to make this the mixed media cupcake. Okay, for the color pencils, I've grabbed my Prismacolors, which in this case, they're all organized to match the Tritone workbook for Prismacolors. So I already have them in little Tritone sets. You can see I've got them all labeled. So I know I need to grab red violet for the bottom of the cup. And I think I'm going to go with a reddish red violet. Yeah. And then I need red for the cherry. And I need my tritone that is violet. Right here, violet. Okay. Again, if you need a tritone workbook to help you get this organized, check out the link in the video description. Let's start with our red violet, and I'll give you the colors I'm going to use. I'm going to add in pomegranate PC 195. Let's see if I can, oops, PC 195. And we'll start our shading, and I'm basically going to do Jennifer's rule of blending thirds, but I'm going to do a simplified version because we're working on marker paper, which doesn't have a whole lot of tooth or texture to hold on to the dry color pencil, but it should work fine, especially using a really pigmented pencil like Prismacolor. Now I'm going to use for the dark is Black Cherry PC 1078. And build in that shadow. I'm just doing medium to heavy pressure here. Just like that. And then I'm going to use my lightest color to blend out the blend, and this is PC 1014. We'll just blend it out right on top of that marker that we did. So it's a variation of Jennifer's rule of blending thirds to get that really pretty blend. Okay, I might add just a little bit more of the PC 1078, the darkest color, right up underneath so that shadow is really a good value contrast from the brightest part of the cupcake. Okay, now let's do the violet. And I have 3 colors here for you for violet. Let me write them all down for you. Now the great thing about using alcohol markers as a base layer is it gets rid of all the white. So if you have issues when you're coloring with color pencils and you wish that there was an easy way rather than just pushing really hard with your pencil to get rid of the white, then you need to think about using alcohol markers as a base layer. It's such a great trick, and that's what makes this cupcake work so well. Alright, I've got my color pencil on there. I also grabbed PC938, which is white, and tinted some of the spots as well. So I'm hoping this will go on top. It's really hard to get gel pen to go on top of color pencil. Let me grab my other gel pen. Okay, I went back and I added a few little white highlights with this gel pen. It's a Pentel gel pen. This is the one that won the battle from that last video that I've already linked for you. It's a white Pentel gel hybrid, and it's a 1.0mm ball. It's a really good gel pen. And I was able to get some white highlights on top that color pencil, but it was tricky. So the Uniball Signo, though, wouldn't even do it at all. So that's why we went to the other gel pen for the color pencil. So there they are, all 4 of our cupcakes. I've taught you how to do basic coloring. I've taught you how to use gray as a shading. I've taught you how to use tritones, 3 colors for each color. And I've taught you how to use alcohol marker as a base layer. 4 different ways to color with your alcohol markers. I want you to comment below which of the cupcakes is your favorite. Is it number 1? Is it number 2? Is it number 3? And is it number 4? And the other question I have is, which cupcake did you learn the most from? Well, did you know about using gray for shadows? Did you know about using a light, medium, and dark? Did you know about using base layers? Which cupcake did you learn the most from, and which one is your favorite? It's hard for me. I'm torn between those 2 right there, which makes sense because we spent our most time and did the most details on those, so I would hope they would look the best. I keep seeing things I wish were a little bit darker over here. That's because the marker has been drying, and now usually it lightens is what happens when you color. The ink will lighten as it dries, so you can sit here and finesse them even more, but I'm pretty happy with those 4 cupcakes, and they're perfect for my birthday because my favorite color is purple. So I'm really pleased with those 4 cupcakes. I really hope you learned a lot in this video. Remember, if you want to learn even more and want me to teach you slower, or you want to know about blending color pencils like I did here, there's so many different workshops available at the Coloring Academy. I highly recommend you go check it out, at least for 1 month. Try it for 1 month. It's only 15 bucks, hundreds of hours there that you can go through and learn on the topics you want, and you might discover even more topics that you're interested in already waiting for you there. You get so much access when you become a member at Coloring Bliss. I highly recommend it. Okay, so I think this video is done. I hope you learned a lot about alcohol markers, and I hope you'll use them more in your coloring and feel even more confident about them. Take your time. Remember, there's a learning curve. Learning how to do that flick correctly, learning how to let the ink dry. Let me show you the back sides of these pages. You can tell this one we used the least amount of ink because we used color pencil with it. This one we used the most ink because we were doing all those layers. There is so much to learn. We've only just touched the top of the mountain of things to learn with alcohol markers, but hopefully I've inspired you and you're ready to pull out your markers and do some coloring. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful, colorful, blissful day.